Everybody, welcome to Just Talking About Jesus. My guest today is David Scott. Welcome, Dave.
Well, thank you, Jan. It's good to be here.
Oh, I've been thinking about having you on for a long time because
Uh-oh.
you have just had an adventure of a life.
That is very true. Not all smiles, but an adventure for sure.
And isn't it great that not all smiles can turn into ashes to beauty?
Yeah, I am astounded daily at where I am and where I've been and how the Lord ever possibly think I was worth more than the stuff I was walking on and especially with what I've done and what I've did and as long as the police aren't listening, I won't be thrown in jail tomorrow.
Haven't killed
But
anybody.
no, I haven't done that. No, it's except the old Dave.
No food poisoning or
No food poisoning. No, 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 no. But a lot of stories about the restaurant industry and why I got out of the restaurant industry and
yeah.
on and on and on. So
Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Minneapolis, in I'm trying to remember the name of well, I won't remember the hospital. Born in Minneapolis. Mom and dad had I had two other brothers that are older than me, so I was the last one. And I always said, well, that's because they finally got it right, so you stopped trying after
Save the
that.
best for last.
Yeah, but I was the baby of the family, and it was kind of I was raised by a lot of women,
Mhm.
which I'm incredibly thankful for because of the viewpoints that it instilled in me at a very early age. And a lot of things that I remember, the good memories, are hanging out because I was the youngest, so I couldn't be on deer stand with everybody else. And so I was back at home with Grandma and Mary Ellen, Aunt Mary Ellen, Aunt Mary Ann, Clem, my mom, and they'd be baking and they'd be making potitza. For any Slovenians out there, potitza. And it was always, it's right now. It's about the time when deer season's on, and so they were always preparing for Christmas. And but the baking and the kibitzing, the mom talks, one of my favorite lines that I always remember was Aunt Mary Ellen kind of yelling at my mom saying, "Oh, Clem, you're not leaving enough on the beater for David to lick."
I
You
gotta
know,
save the beater.
you gotta save extra frosting on the beater for Dave to lick because he's here with us. So it was. Yeah, so it was like surrounded by a lot of women all my life, and it was pretty interesting because anybody who knows Slovenians, Yugoslavia, Serbo-Croatians, there's about 13 different tribes in that country that were unified by Tito. Doing a little history here, but they were very, I don't want to call them nomadic, but they were the original gypsies.
Mm.
And so, very, very Christian group. I mean, incredible, strong, religious people, but they read cards and they did tea leaves and they did palms and all the good stuff. But it wasn't anything. I mean, I was warned by a lot of the women telling me to stay away from anybody who called themselves a witch. So it was like I'm kind of guarded about saying these things because a lot of people fly off and say, "Oh, that's devil worship," but in reality, it was always positive. It was always thinking, and it was so. I mean, I couldn't get away with much because I'd come home and mom would be looking at me like, "Yeah, I already know what you did," kind of a thing, and which probably is women's intuition. But I was always fascinated about it, and I had my mom. I said, "What do I have to learn? This is great because they are very perceptive, very insightful, incredible stuff." And I asked her how to read cards, and she looked at me and said, "They're a prop."
Mhm.
It's like, what? It says, "Yeah, they're a prop. I am trying to pick up on who this person is and tell them things they already know, but they don't want to admit." And it was just so fascinating because the older I got, the more I realized what they were doing is they were talking to the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
It
Mm.
wasn't, it's not, it's the good
Interesting.
witch. I mean, it's the good side. And you think about it, um, and I asked her how to do it, and she said, "Oh, you have it. Matter of fact, we all do."
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I'm going, wait a minute, okay. And I mean, doing the rosaries in the morning. That was a regular thing. Look down the hall, there's grandma in a rocking chair smiling, doing the rosaries with the picture of Jesus up above her, hands like this and the heart with the spear stuck through it. I'm
Uh-huh.
sure you've
Yep,
seen, you
yep,
know what I'm
yep.
talking
Oh
about.
yeah, yep.
And just
Sacred
smiling
Heart of
and
Jesus.
yeah, and grandma, you'd call it, oh, sunshine, my little sunshine. And it was just this always just, it was nothing but love.
Mm,
And, it was kind of interesting. My next oldest brother was 2 years older than me, which isn't a lot, but then was huge. I mean, I was in elementary school and both my brothers were in junior high. I finally get to junior high and one of my brothers is getting ready to graduate from high school. And so it was like I was in a different group. And so I was the baby of the family. I was the hung with mom quite a bit. And I'm very thankful because I grew up in a kitchen
mhm.
and here I am retired and in a kitchen. And and it was so fun because my mom once told me she just kind of looked at me and goes, Dave, you're going to be surrounded by a lot of women. And I went like, oh darn. And then shortly thereafter, I start working in the restaurant business, and I'm surrounded by wait staff, and majority of the wait staff, even now, are predominantly female.
Mhm,
And so and I always kind of clicked. Then go through high school and all that, and get into college, and I find out that my path of education happened to be in the School of Home Economics. Darn, there I am, ironing my shirt in the morning, going, gosh, I have to sit in a room with 30 other women,
yeah.
kind of, and it was really interesting because I have, ever since she told me that, I've always been around a lot of women. And
She
I
read
think
it in the
that's,
cards.
yeah, well, I didn't want to, yeah, she said, yeah. And but I think it's very good because you gals, A, don't get the credit you deserve. B, have such skills that men could use. The Lord made us differently, and that's great, and for His purposes, and it makes all kinds of sense. But that level of empathy and being able to discern when something isn't right, and to know that, okay, we're going to wait for a moment when everybody goes away, that I can just go and say, okay, what did I do? What's wrong? And it's usually the times when I've done that, it's shocking. The person is shocked that I'm bringing it up. And I really believe that that was being around a lot of women.
Mhm.
Because you gals say half of a sentence and the other person says, yeah, I know. And then they say half their sentence and you turn out and say, exactly. I mean, it's like you're like half a sentence ahead of each other all the time. And that's cool. I mean, I really, I can't do that, but I think it's a wonderful thing, and it shows empathy, and I think well, it's part of being a woman. You know what your kids are up to, and so I think everything that my mom had did, and my grandmother and my aunts and all, they just leaned into that skill or blessing or whatever you want to call it, and it just became this. They knew what was going on, and it's really,
Mhm.
really, I think, a great place to come from. And I mean, it's very comfortable for me because over the years, I've I've known something was going to happen before it happens, and
Mhm.
I really think that that's the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
Um, and not at the time that I ever really ever acknowledged that's where it was, but there was something, and I knew it was the truth, and I was like, oh boy, there are a couple of times that I didn't get in that car with those people. And there, when I could have turned to the right, but I turned to the left. Had I turned to the right, I would end up at somebody's house and gotten arrested for dealing the drugs I was dealing, or just things like that. That I know there was definitely a higher power involved.
Mhm.
And for anybody's watching, yes, I'm an AA member. I've been sober about 8 years now. And the first thing in anybody out there that understands 12 steps is that you're surrendering to a higher power. And AA is really careful about talking about God. I mean, it took them years to write this 100 pages or less because the authors were very, very Christian. and they had to continually take out any referral to Christianity or God in a way, so they didn't want to get anybody to not join because I'm not going to, they're just a bunch of Bible thumpers. So they have terms like higher power and find your place of peace and those types of things where it's like they're just have found a different way to say it.
Yeah.
And I know other people in my original AA groups that were really staunchly
Hmm.
anti-Christian for whatever reason. I don't want to go there, um, but it's really fascinating that the parallels and how well that whole program works.
Hmm.
That AA spawned NA and all these anonymous groups, and they're basically using AA as a guide. So, um, it just reiterates the fact that everything goes back to God. Everything goes, and the moment you realize you ain't driving the bus, the world becomes a better place.
Well, not only are you not driving the bus, you don't have to drive the bus.
No, exactly.
You don't have to be in control.
Well, from for those of you that don't know me, that might be watching right now, I went to culinary school. And why do you go to culinary school? Become a chef. And why do you want to become a chef? Well, because you're better than anybody. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. There are very few very humble chefs. And I've met more and more of them lately because at the Cannon Beach Christian Culinary Academy where I teach, we have guest chefs. We have probably about 20 that come in through the course of the year. They're all Christians, and it amazes me because it wasn't till I got here that I ever met a Christian chef.
Mm.
And now every day, sorry, Pastor John, if you're listening, but you probably agree with me. I'm surrounded by more Christians at school than I ever am in church, if that makes sense to you.
Mhm.
I mean, it's so wonderful to see these 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds that are just so on fire for the Lord and know their Bible's upside down. They make me feel really stupid because I'm still kind of learning. But it is just inspiring
Yeah.
to see that. And we get so down about where this world is going and such, and it's so enlightening and so uplifting to come across a group of kids. I want to call them, forgive me for calling them kids,
Oh,
they're all
yeah.
adults, who love the Lord and are positive. And I mean, it astounded me the first
And
time I was there.
it makes you hopeful,
It really does.
knowing there's
It
another generation that's coming up that is,
Right.
yeah,
Well, you hear so many negative things about what's going on, and you see on TV or whatever, you see so many negative things that are being done by, younger generations. And the thing is that it's tough for us to realize that what we see on TV or hear about or read about is 1/10 of 1%. And I think Turning Point USA is an incredible showing of how small the dissidents really are in population. When you see 60,000 people just the other night show up, get through Berkeley, California, getting through there, and there people are banging on cars and each other saying how terrible the world is. But inside, we have peaceful, wonderful folks, all under the age of probably 25, and that is just so hopeful to see that happen. And
yeah.
yeah, and one of my favorite, it's kind of sad that it came to this, but one of my favorite things that I've seen on the news lately was Charlie Kirk's wife,
Mm.
and she was talking about she had to see him. He had passed, and she fought to see him in the hospital, and she wanted to give him a kiss, which God bless her. And they fought. No, you can't. And she said, "Nope, I'm going to do this." And went in there, and she said he had a smirk on his face.
Mm.
And I was like, that kind of like what? And she goes, "Yeah, I knew what he was saying. He's saying you can't stop me now." And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you tried, but now it's just gonna steamroll, and it's really true. It's
Yeah.
it's it's
Yeah.
cool, and I'm so thankful for this group and especially Turning Point and what they're doing. Um,
Let me ask you this. So I like
yeah,
to think about, where Joshua and about chapter 4 and the
right.
Israelites have just gone through the river and God says, I want you to pick up stones and make an altar
Yeah.
so that you can remember what God did here. What are some of those spots for you?
Um, there are a number of them. I'll start really early, and I kind of alluded to this where I gotten off. I was bartending at the time, and I was dealing cocaine. And I was about to get off, and a very, very intoxicated gal came stumbling up to me. I was on the route to the bathroom, and she said, "Oh, you're Dave." And I went like, "Yeah." I says, she looks at me and goes, "Don't go to Paula's." What? She says, I just don't go there. And she stumbled off. And I finished up my shift and I'm on my motorcycle and I'd get to the end of the parking lot. And if I turned to the right, I'd end up going to Paula's house. If I turned to the left, I'd get to the interstate and drive home. And I remember staying there for just a moment and I turned left and I got on the interstate. The next day, I find out that everybody got busted at that house.
Hmm.
Knowing how
Which might have
deep,
been a good thing for you.
either way, yeah, either way, but I prefer the way it went. This is in 1982. And things, things were not had not been going smoothly or well. Uh, then I got home and I remember watching a checking account go from a couple $1,000s to being overdrawn. And I'm going, if they have all those people, every one of them knows me. And what is a good detective going to do? So I was a little short of cash. I called up my dad the next morning. And I said, "Hey, can I borrow a couple $100?" He goes, "Sure, come on by." Had a friend who had just moved to Montana. And I said, I came on over and I called my employer and I said, "That's it. I'm not going to be in. I'm done." Normally I'm the guy who gives a 2 week notice, but that was just Nick. Nope, not going to do it. And I find out later it's kind of good because they're going to fire me anyway, kind of a deal. So they didn't, no skin off anybody's nose. But I remember they're asking and going to my dad's house and he held out a couple $100 bills in his hands, like, this. And I grabbed them and he held on to them and looked at me and said, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm moving to Montana." I had a friend there. He goes, "Why?" "Nobody knows me there." He goes, "Okay, call or write when you get there." And I got on my motorcycle and drove straight through and took a job as
Were
an
you living
exec
at
chef.
home still? No, you weren't living.
No, I wasn't. I
No,
was
you
living
weren't
in an
by yourself.
apartment, but it
Yeah.
had a roommate, and I said, I'm going." He was about out of there anyway, so, and
Mm.
I, drove out to Montana, took a job as an exec chef at the Baxter Hotel. Anybody knows Bozeman, Montana, knows the Baxter Hotel, and it was really quite funny because I was no way, shape, or form uh, at all qualified for the job. I'd worked in restaurants a long time. I had a VOTEC degree in cook chef. They hired me.
Mm.
And I'd been, in management before, so it was like, okay. And the place had a number of different restaurants. And so what they really needed was a manager because I was spending most of my time scheduling, ordering, and then everybody's day off I covered for them in the four restaurants and the catering and stuff like that. So I got to learn a whole bunch. It really was, I didn't draw, I mean, I didn't plan this. And so I got to learn a whole lot, live in a small world where everybody knows everything about everybody.
Mm.
And that didn't take long for the sink in, and I loved it. And it was Bozeman at the time was about 9,000. Moving on to Minneapolis to that was it took me about 2 years to slow down enough.
Yeah.
The people still thought I was weird, but I slowed down. Um, and worked there for quite a long time and basically drank my way out of that after about 10 years.
But
And
so when you moved, though,
yeah.
were you still you decided you were done selling drugs at that point?
I didn't know anybody, so I couldn't buy anything. Didn't have anything to sell. Well, honestly used up everything I had. And there really wasn't anything to do. And so, in a way, it was good. And another way, well, I switched to alcohol.
Mm,
And so I'd always, had a beer or whatever, but it was just kind of became, oh, I can't do that. This is legal, and away we go. And we're in the hospitality industry. And anybody who's listening who knows restaurant industry could probably see where I'm going right now,
mm,
because it is a dark industry. They're wonderful people, fun, great. When you're 19, 20, 21 year old, it's fabulous fun, but it gets old real fast, and you got to keep up. And it's drinks in the night and coffee in the morning and get me through this another day, and it's on and on and on and on.
is
And
it because it's the pace?
a little bit of the pace, and you're working 6 day weeks. I mean, that's just all there is to it. You're salaried, so they're 10-hour days. You have you're a chef, so nobody knows how to do it like you do, kind of a thing. So and it was really great because I came out of a fairly well schooled area as far as culinary goes, to a very kind of a culinary desert of sorts,
Mhm.
going from Minneapolis, where there are a lot of five-star restaurants. I actually apprenticed at one, a place called Charlie's Cafe, downtown Minneapolis, and went to Bozeman, Montana, and the simplest things were brand new to them.
Mhm.
Um, Quick story. The first night I'm in the pasta company, which is the white tablecloth dinner, and I'm covering, and the wait staff comes back. It's like 4:45. They come to me and go, Chef, what's the special tonight? And I had no idea. Hadn't figured what the heck I was going to do. And I would like, Ebony, what can I make really quickly? And I said, chicken Kiev. Now, if you've ever been eaten on an airline or anywhere for any years, chicken Kiev's pretty mundane. It's basically a chicken breast stuffed with butter, and you fry it, and then you push your knife into it, and it squirts butter all over, and it's lovely. It's wonderful. And she went, well, what's that? So I made one and put it in the window, and they're all look here. I got eight wait staffs like looking at this thing, going, "Oh, wow!" And I grab a bunch of forks and throw them in the window, and they're like, "What's that for?" I said, "Taste it." We get to, well, you're selling it, you want to taste it. And so they went, and then literally, oh, I had to go get a knife, and I come back, it's gone. They've eaten everything. And I made, I think we were looking at doing maybe 80 dinners. If I hear me say covers, that means a dinner.
Yeah.
80 covers for the night. So I made 20 of these, and we sold out by like 7 o'clock because they were all fired up, and I had to make more. And everybody said, "Oh, we got this great chef." When I just made something that Delta or
Goes this way.
Northwest Orient would give to their tourist
Yeah.
passengers. Oh, what did I just do? Tourist passengers, and they're loving it. And I'm going,
Okay.
what
Yeah.
else can what
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
pedestrian type things could I do that they've never heard of or never
Yeah.
seen? And so I just had to have one good dish every day, and I got to work with all these other people who ran. We had chefs running each one of these other restaurants, and I was covering their day off. So I got to learn from all them.
Yeah.
I was good at ordering, so we didn't run out of stuff. That was basically it. And
Yeah.
so that was one, and it got me out there.
Stop,
And then
stop a
go
minute
ahead.
now because our time's almost up. So let's
Okay.
just pop out and then just log in the same thing again.
Okay, hopefully I can do that. So you're
Well,
gonna
you got
stop
here
it.
once, right?
Yeah.
You just you
Good
just
point.
hit the same way you got here, okay?
Okay.
All right,
We'll
see you in a
see you in a
minute.
minute.
Tell
Um,
me, at what point did you um have your epiphany with God just to know that he's the real deal?
Well, I bounced off it a couple of times, but I basically had drank my way out of the industry. Went to work from the restaurant to a food service distributor by the name of Cisco Food Services, um, selling goods to restaurants. And being the go-getter, I went in being so good at what I thought I was, ended up getting elevated into a district manager. This all happened in about 3 years, and in about 4 years, the bottom starts coming out again because I'm messing up. I mean, I'm not, I'm upsetting people in as far as management, not customers, and not my salespeople I was supervising. And so, fortunately, my boss made a mistake in numbers and accused me in an open meeting of actually not exceeding last year's sales or profit numbers, when in reality I was. And that gave me the option where I just shut up and left the meeting. And I had people saying, "Oh, how can he say that?" And on and on. He doesn't know what's going on. And I got back home and I was thinking about that, going, this might be a real convenient way to get out of this. And, I've always been, I've always ran. I've never stood and fought. And so I quit. And I wrote and left. And at that point in time, I was living in Missoula, Montana, and I moved back to Bozeman. I'm saying I'm going back to Bozeman, someplace safe and what have you. And I got back there and I'm going, what am I going to do? I had graduated from the university there. What am I going to do? And basically, nobody's going to hire me. So I started setting tile. This took a long time. I was left-handed. Someone hired me to work in it is well, I got hired to run stick, which means you're working for an excavator, and I'm walking around with the stick checking grade. And that moves on. Shortly, he's building houses, and then he gets a point, and he goes, he was complaining that the tile setter hadn't shown up or wouldn't show up for another week. And I said, well, I can do that. I'd seen some of it. He goes, well, what do you need? I said, a tile saw, a mud whip, some 5-gallon buckets, a trowel, and thin set.
Yeah.
And like 2 days later, all that stuff's on the job site, and he goes to go to it. And it's like, oh no, now I opened my mouth. And so I quickly read everything I possibly could. It was on a Friday to make sure I knew what I was doing and it wouldn't fall apart. And I got going and I loved it.
Ah,
Absolutely
ah,
loved it. So
ah.
I went off on that for a while, and I'm going to get to the answer to your question. But it's to transmit from going from restaurant and restaurant sales into construction. And then I met a wonderful woman, got married, had a kid, and shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with a myxoid round cell liposarcoma, which is cancer in my thigh. And I went in, and my doctor said, "Oh, it's just a little something to go in and cut it out." Well, before they ever did that, they did a biopsy and find out that it's this mix, what they call myxoid and round cell. Round cells where it's expanding. So it's basically hasn't become malignant yet, but it's going that way. So I went off and actually to the Hutchinson Cancer Care Center in Seattle, and they put me on inpatient chemotherapy, and then they a few treatments of that, and they cut the cancer out, and then I was back on it, and then radiation at the time. And I remember I'm in an inpatient. I didn't realize how serious this thing was. When the nurses, there's only one nurse on duty that could handle the chemotherapy that I was taking.
Mm.
And it came in and it was colored red. And if any of you people out there listening are nurses, they called me, I was a ruby client, which that was the color of that chemo meant stay away unless you're fully trained. And so, or the Ruby Sisters or something like that. But it was funny. So they had me on this drip, and it's a 4-day inpatient. And I remember this is the second or third of that, and I'm sitting there in a hospital, hooked up to the thing, pumping me with this stuff. I've got no hair. I'm feeling pretty miserable. I'm all alone. It's 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and in Montana, and I hear the sound of a plow truck. Have you ever a snow plow? And
Supper.
it's like it's going across the asphalt plowing. And I look out the window and here it had snowed a bunch. And I look out the window and here's a one guy in a pickup truck with a snowplow, and he's plowing this massive hospital parking lot. And I'm sat there and I said, if there's only one person lonelier than me, and that's that guy right out there. And I got hit with, I can't even explain it. I got hit with so much emotion, just, I mean, I'm starting to swell up now. Um, that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone, you know, but of course, I couldn't believe that. And so I go through this whole thing. Years go by. That was kind of a fence post. Years go by. I start this other business, very successful business, and I'm so much into it that my wife, I come home, or she calls me up, says, "Can I meet you someplace?" I was like, "Well, how about home?" "No, I'm gonna meet you just like at the park." It's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm going, what? And I show on up, and she basically tells me she's divorcing me. Haven't heard, didn't know anything about it. I'm an idiot. I'm a drunk. I mean, well, what, up, and so we're getting divorced. And I went home, and they had moved out of the house. The
Mm.
place was empty. There was nothing in there. And then it started to sink in. I'm going, now, okay, how many times do you have to bounce off the bottom? Yeah, yeah, hello.
2 by 4 moment.
Yeah, and I turned around and after I left home and I went back to work. I went back to the shop because there's no reason for me there. And I got back there and I had me a, bottle of vodka there and I started drinking it. And I got done, went home, went to bed, and that was Friday. And then that Sunday, I'm at church, and we had new pastors, and there was a husband wife treat team, and the wife, the female pastor, comes walking by, and she looks. We don't know each other, and she does one of these, looks over, and sits down right next to me, and goes, "I'm feeling a lot of pain." And I went like, "Yeah." So am I. She goes, "Let's talk." And she gets back up and with her husband they preach. And I'm going like, "Oh my gosh," I'm getting flashback to my mom doing
Yeah.
card readings. And so I sit there and we meet and we talk and she goes, "Well, we got this picnic on tomorrow, the next day after church. Why don't you let's talk after that, meet us over here." And I left there and went to the shop and drank. And I got done and I come on back. It's about 4 o'clock, and I come on in and I mean literally I'm standing there waiting to talk to her. There's people bounce because they're bouncing off her. "Hey, how you doing?" And she looks at me and she goes, "Have you been?" It doesn't say anything. I barely know this woman's name. And she looks at me and goes, "You've been drinking?" I went, "Yes." And that's the first time I think I'd been honest in a long time.
Oh,
And she goes, "Tomorrow at 10 a.m., come to the office. We'll have coffee." I mean, now she's said, what, 8 words to me
yeah.
in 2 days or in a day and a half. And so I end up going in, we have coffee, and I just explode. This is all on and on and on and on and on. And she just looks right at me because you need to go to AA. Okay, I'll do it. What else do I have to lose? And she says this, she has the list of all the meetings and stuff, and there's this, and this was, I think this was on Tuesday, and I'm sitting at home, and she goes, "Oh, there's this newbies meeting on whatever day, like on Saturday." And I'm sitting there looking, and I go, "There's also a meeting tonight at 7 o'clock, and it's right over there." So I went.
Yeah.
And I sat, I mean, I walked around the block about 6 times and I went on in and
Getting the courage to go in.
followed the signs, get to the right room, walk in the door. I mean, I walk in the door and three people look at me and go, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm so and so. What's your name?" "Great. Have a seat." We sit there and they go around the whole room and everybody says something that comes to me. And now I know, okay, I've seen it enough. You're supposed to say, "Hi, my name is this. I'm an alcoholic." And you start spieling. I sat there and pardon me, but I bitched
I
for
was going to say maybe it got to you, and for some remarkable time, you had nothing to say.
no, no, I'll never have nothing to say. Um, but it was like I sat there and just for like 15 minutes. Went around, they said that we do the Lord's Prayer and the whole thing and see you next week. And I had like three people come up to me, good to meet you. Gosh, you're gonna come back and on and on. I'm going, I just sat in here and bitched at you for a half an hour and you're inviting me back? I find out later that every one of those guys that did that, I was them
Yeah,
years
that's what I was going to
before.
say. Yeah,
And they were just smiling, going, you don't
I
get
know
it.
that guy.
Yeah, I know he doesn't have to tell the whole story, but it's good to hear. And I was going like, oh my gosh, and I sat there and I'm going, well, Lord, yeah, let's get this since the wife is doing her thing, she's out of here making a change. Why don't we just make a list of what we don't like?
Yeah,
Let's say, how tough is it if I've got one thing that's thrown on me? Why don't I throw eight of them? Why not? And I mean, literally, I was 325 pounds at the time.
oh my
And
word.
yeah, oh yeah. I'm gonna stop drinking. I'm gonna lose the weight. I'm going to get the house cleaned. I mean, I went right on through all these things. I'm gonna start working on selling my business. And I go, I can't do this alone. I know I can't do this alone. And it's like, okay, well, there's those 10 steps up there, and did I get through it? And it's like, wow, ask for help. Wow. Get some friends. Wow. Come to terms with who you are. Wow. And it's like I'm paraphrasing a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but it's like, and things started to change. I dropped 120 pounds. I've gained some of it back, so shh, don't tell anybody. Um, and I stopped drinking. I haven't had a drink in 8 years. It'll be eight years in July. Um, haven't done any other drugs. What else was I going to say? You know, and there I am going. I'm kind of getting my poop in a group. And my niece turns to me and says, well, have you been looking, Uncle Davy? And I was like, well, not really. He says, it's easy. Let me show you. And it's like she gets on the computer, goes, okay, what's your middle name again? Okay. And what do you do? Okay. And she's typing, what do you like? What don't you like? Your height, weight, this whole thing. And
set
she
you
goes,
up.
boom, there you are. And I see here she's got a picture of me up and she's got this whole thing. And she looks at me and goes, don't reach out to any of the women. It's like, what? It says, nope, let them come to you. Really? Why? Watch this. And she starts making a fictitious file on herself. And before she's even done posting it, she's getting hit on by guys.
Yeah,
She goes, that's why. If they
yeah,
come across you and find you and reach out, be nice, be respectful. If they want to meet them. If you're not interested, doesn't matter. Just be nice, and just like having a little coffee with somebody. And I'm just like, that's really cool. And let's see, it was probably about 3 months later that my current wife reaches out, and it was her last day on the site, and it was so funny because I get this thing, hi, and her question was, "What's your sign?" And I'm like, I'm going, oh gosh, I've got one of them. Well, there's a lot of, and I get it, a lot of people have put some kind of stock in
yeah.
how folks, personalities, not gonna find out, but it was really funny. And she goes, okay, well, I was living in Bozeman, she's in Billings, and she goes, well, why don't you come, let's go for dinner. I said, okay, Saturday. She says, why don't you meet me at church? And I went like, that. I mean, I was actually happy about
Yeah,
that going because my ex-wife, she wanted to go to church, but she'd spend up working in the nursery. She wasn't there.
yeah,
She
yeah.
was there because of her parents. And, didn't take much long. I remember getting asked by one of her coworkers what I thought of her. We're having dinner with about 8 of us, and I said, I'm intrigued. The guy who asked the question, he was like, "What? You're intrigued?" The gals at the table are all going, kind of a thing. So, a year, not even a year later, we're married. Um, and about a little before that happened, I get my second cancer diagnosis.
Mm.
My PSA went from nothing to 135 in a couple of days. The prostate cancer metastasized to my hip.
Mm.
And once you say metastasized in that, the medical profession doesn't even want to talk to you.
No, yeah, yeah. That's not a good word.
No, and one of the doctors I didn't even know him was walking by and hey, you're so and so. I'm so it's great, doctor. What great. And he looks at me, he goes, don't get a dog. And it's like, why? He says, oh, you got maybe 6 months to live.
Okay. That was encouraging.
That was, and I mean, I broke down. I couldn't even get out of the hospital. I broke down and called Lori, and she came and met me, and we went home, and we flew to a couple places to look at stuff, to talk to people. Came out of here to OHSU, went to I can't remember the place in Denver. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Oh, it metastasized. Okay, well, there's nothing we can do. So then our pastors back there says, "Why don't you guys get married? We've been living together for a little while." Shh. And so it's like, okay. And at the end of a church service on a Sunday, Eric, the pastor, goes, "Let's have a wedding," and calls us up there. Our members were in the audience, kind of a thing, and the place was going, "What? What?" So we got married right after church on Sunday morning, and uh, and after that, she goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know." I figured way back when, and if wasn't it didn't work in Montana, when I threw my leg over my motorcycle and headed out to Bozeman in '82, if it didn't work, I'd just keep driving to the Oregon coast. So I put the house up for sale, sold it, moved out here, and funny, driving through, we started in Lincoln City, and we're going up and down, we're looking at all these places, and every time we drove through Seaside on that little zigzag kind of thing, look on over, and there's NCFF, and it doesn't really, they didn't have the cross up yet. We kept on looking over, and I'm going, that's a church. But people go through and looking back in your, and literally, we fell into the house we're in. I mean, it turned out to be everything that Lori wanted, everything that was busted in here I was aware of. I knew I wasn't going to fix it, but I knew how it could be fixed and that it wasn't a death sentence on the house.
Yeah.
And we're about 85, 90% through all that and got a deal. I mean, the house was, I mean, we got it for a lot less than it was on the market for, because of everything that was wrong and it had been on sale for a while. But it was literally, and the second, we went to a small church in Warrenton, a Methodist church. No, we didn't go there. We went to a different place. I don't know the name of it. And the young pastor came on over and said, "Hey, you're not from here." And it's like, yeah, we started talking, and he goes, and so we're just kind of checking it out. And he lists off, well, you will check this guys out, check this church out, check that. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And as I'm walking out, Lori looks at me and goes, "Yeah, this church is too small." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We're going to be on every committee." So we end up, and I think we went to another one, I won't be named, very close to where we live. And it was literally just no good vibe. And then we wandered the next Sunday, we're at NCFF and literally opened those doors and looked down that hall. And here's all these people having coffee and laughing. And I'm just like, well, yeah, this is kind of cool. And we walk on through and turn the corner, and here's, Jeanette. Jeanette and Lori go that, and they're like, and I'm like looking over, and Grant, her husband, looks at me, comes over and says, "Well, we better get this done. I'm Grant." It's going to be a while, and we haven't looked back. It's been so the pillars. There are a lot of little pillars that I'm never going to forget, um, but every one of them, I don't know if I've called it a pillar, like you're saying, as much as a wall
Mhm.
that. Yeah, you're not going that way any farther. No, you're not going. And I turn around. No, it wasn't even 3 months after we moved here. I'm sitting having an MRI, and I look on over, and the radiologist who's watching it is reading Job.
Mm.
I was like struck, and I look on over and I look at it and I say, "Oh, there's my metastasis right there." And he looks at it and looks over at me. He goes, he gets on the phone and calls somebody else in. They're staring at it, and he looks at me and goes, "You can see them. You can see the metastasis." I said, "Yeah, it's right there. Where is it?" And I point to it, and the two of them look at me and go, "No, that's the bladder for your catheter." Because they put him in, you don't want it to pull out, so they inflate a little ball inside
Uh-huh.
so he can't get
Uh-huh.
it. No,
Uh-huh.
that's the bladder for the catheter. I'm going, well, isn't there metastasis there somewhere? And they go, no.
So all this time they misread your.
No, they didn't. They
Oh,
really didn't. I had all the symptoms. I could tell something wasn't right. Um, no, they didn't have it wrong. They would not have put the catheter. I could not urinate.
yeah.
So and so, but I saw pictures is not Xeroxes, I almost said, but I saw pictures of the bone with it was like a whiter. You could tell there's something wrong there. I mean, I saw it. It's not there. Yeah, I go from being told, "Don't get a
Get a dog.
dog. You got 3 to 6 months to live. Um, go live," to saying, "Okay, Lord," to falling into this place where we're at now, this house, this church, this group of people. Then I'm coming back from church. This is the wildest of all things. We're driving back from church on a Sunday, come around the corner. Here's this little headed, haired lady hobbling down the middle of the street, and we about hit her. I mean, we're not going that fast, but it's like way around him and look on over. And it's like, oh, okay, we wave and I get on in, and I'm moving all my, my retirement stuff out here to I was with Edward Jones, and my guy back in Bozeman goes, well, you need someone there. I said, okay, well, who you got? So I got this guy, Brian. And he goes, yeah, and he rattles it off, and I'm going, he's in Warrenton. I'm going, wait a minute. That's right out here. He's like in our subdivision. Yeah, and I meet him, and I'm lo and behold, we're going to church together, and I almost ran over his mother-in-law. It was just, I mean, tell me how this works.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're sitting there
All the
meeting.
layers all
Yeah,
go.
it gets even better if it's possible. We're sitting there meeting, and he's talking about, well, we got to do this and this and this and this. And he looks at his watch and goes, oh my gosh, I got to go. I'm going to be late for a meeting with Ira and Abby.
Hmm.
And I'm going, where this guy said, oh, well, what do they do? Oh, they run a culinary school in Cannon Beach. I'm going, there's a culinary school in Cannon Beach? He goes, yeah, there's a Christian culinary school in Cannon Beach. He goes, yes, it's the only one in the world. The only Christian culinary academy in the world is in Cannon Beach. So
Hmm.
I get a bar napkin, I scribble out a Vetus, and I go see if they're interested. Next day, I get a phone call from Ira. Hey, can you come meet us? And they come on down there, and I'm talking, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And we walk on through the whole place. They walk through the cafeteria, through the kitchen. And that's great. And we go into the dining room, and I'm not floor to ceiling picture windows, but there's that whole wall of windows, and there's the ocean. And I'm going, and they're walking by. I said, no, I'm gonna give me a minute. Like, whoa. And we get back in. We're sitting there, and it turns out that I'm not the greatest culinarian in the world. I mean, I can hold my own, but my claim to fame has always been management, entrepreneurship. And they say they were just about to put an ad in for somebody, yeah, right, for somebody to take on the second year program that they're just starting in entrepreneurship. And they sit there and go, have you ever written a business plan? I said, yep, I've written three. The first two went out of business, and the last one I just sold and retired from. And they're going like, "Oh boy, can you write a business plan?" Oh, yeah, I know all about it, and on and on. And they're like, then all of a sudden they're kind of Ira and Abby are going, oh, and they're kind of looking sheepish. And they look at me and says, we don't know how much we can really afford to pay you. And I look at him, I said, the only thing I want from you is to be able to tell you when I will and will not be here.
Yeah,
And it was like, I'm retired. Now, I'm
right.
not supposed to be alive, and all this happened. So, uh, anybody wants to tell me that God doesn't exist, I'm going to call a flat out liar. Anybody who wants to tell me that God doesn't care or doesn't love you, I'm going to call a flat out liar. I walked away from him for 40 plus years, and every time I stopped long enough for him to hit me over the head, he did. Um, I bypassed so many things that I should have been in jail. I should have, I mean, waking up in my car with the car running with my foot on the brake at like 5:30 in the morning on the side of the road on an interstate and come through and go, what am I doing? Like, oh, and I'm right at the base of the exit to where I have to get off to my house. And I drive, I mean, stupid things. So many of them like that, that turn to the right, turn to the left, that just didn't happen.
Mhm.
And there's only one explanation.
It's called grace.
It's Amazing Grace. And I know Amazing Grace too. And it's just like, how could, and people want to tell me this is all a fantasy.
Hmm.
My life is a fantasy. There's no reason I should be living it.
Hmm.
And, I get through a divorce and I'm fine, financially fine. I mean, we move here, find this place. It's perfect. I mean, it's like,
All the pieces.
yeah, I
Oh.
didn't even get a picture for the cover of the puzzle, jigsaw puzzle. And now I'm seeing
Yeah.
the picture of the jigsaw puzzle, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh man. And so, and
So
I know
if you could leave our listeners, watchers with one word, what would you like to tell people?
be confident, be patient, keep your ears open, let go of the steering wheel. I can't remember the country western star's name, but that song, I'm not dry. She goes, I let go of the wheel, Lord, and you drive every time. And I don't have the personality to let go of the wheel. So that's probably why I bounced off of him so many times. But things could not be better than what I have now. I didn't plan. I couldn't have written this story. There's no possible way that 10 years ago you could have turned to me and said, you're going to be a chef instructor at a culinary school. Wait a minute, I drank my way out of that. How could that possibly be? You're not going to live in Montana anymore. You're going to be on the Oregon coast. How does that happen? Sometimes I guess another thing too is the very astute people never have a problem. It's all an opportunity
Mhm.
in disguise. When things go, when God gives you lemons, you make
Right.
lemonade.
Right.
No, you give yourself lemons and he shows you how to make lemonade. And it's like you just have to kick back and have faith in the fact that you can't do it. There's no possible way. We all think we can. And the beautiful thing is you get to the point where you go, yeah, that's right. I can't do it. And look at what's happening. And then you hear the people go, oh, you Christian, you whatever. And I
And
go,
you just say, you know what? You just do not know what you're missing out on.
yeah, it's like trust, give it a try. I mean,
Yeah.
and the beautiful thing, I mean, this is the one thing I'll finish with, if you can believe that. Um, is that every year now when we have the graduation ceremony at school, and there's like 10 kids or 10 students, and we've got 20 adults and their parents are there and maybe some family. And Ira knows to make me almost last and only give me this much time. And he goes, "Would you come up here and say some words?" And he also knows not to tell me he's going to do it. because then I get it up there and whatever spews out. But every time it's really funny. It's come out to be the same thing. And I think I'm going to say the same thing. And this is basically, I tell, here we got these students, they're Christian kids are coming out, they're going into the restaurant business. It's an incredibly dark world. Every immorality you can imagine occurs daily in the restaurant, into the hospitality industry. And I tell them, you are, well, it says in the Bible, we're going to be hated for being your disciple, but you're going to get mocked. And they're going to be going, oh, look at that. He doesn't go out drinking with us. He doesn't want to do this. And da 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 da. I said, perfect. Because here's what's going to happen. Somewhere, sometime, and it's going to be in the first couple of months here somewhere, one of your coworkers is going to, in the middle, when there's nobody else around, is going to look around and go, what's up with you? Why? What makes you different? What's going on? So that's the moment that you disciple. You say, well, let me tell you about the Lord because he's the one that saved me from everything I've ever done. And I can tell you, but I think you need to hear this. And that's where you turn around and say, you don't have to do this. You don't have to work so hard. It's really simple. Yeah, you take a few hits to the head, but you're not nothing that you can't handle. And every time it happens, you're going to learn from it and go, you're going to be better because of it. And that person may not buy into it at that moment, but you plant that seed, and I look back at me at that first pile of rocks we were talking about, and I keep looking back at every one of those, and I'm going, yep, he was there every time. I can't explain it any other way. I mean, I should be dead. I should be dead 5 times over, and I'm not.
Yeah.
Why? And I'm going, he wants me there talking to these kids going into this industry.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can teach him a thing or two, but what he really wants me to teach him is about his love and how I was saved by his grace. And that, I mean, it's gotten to the point now I can talk about my alcoholism and some of these things in front of the class and not break down crying. I still choke up because it's so true. And it is amazing because every class now, there's been one person who's pulled me aside at the end and said, I have this addiction, or I'm struggling with this. And it doesn't matter what addiction you ever had because they're all the same.
Mhm.
And it's just, I'm going like, wow, I save, if I can help one.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
yeah,
Wow. All right. But God,
but God, by the grace of the
all that
Lord.
time he's writing your testimony.